After 15 years of Popeye-less Nintendo consoles, Nintendo finally decided to grow a pair and license one for the Nintendo Switch, and for the first time ever in 3D no less, but the real question at hand though is it any good? Well, it's only 800 megabytes and was brought to you by the same people who developed the Nintendo Switch calculator that cost $10, so what do you think?
Cameron, all one word. Cameron, there's danger. And no one never fails once he's involved. Somehow whatever's wrong gets solved. Cameron, all one word. Cameron, there's danger. Oh no, it never fails. He'll take the clues and find the where's and why's and who. Cameron, all one word. Cameron, there's danger. Cameron.
Back in the early 80s, a full-grown man by the name of Shigeru Hot Stuff Miyamoto dreamed bigger than anybody before him ever had by aspiring to make a Popeye arcade game, but sadly, the company he worked for at the time, Nintendo, didn't have enough notoriety to secure the rights to the IP, so he had to rework his entire game into what we all know now as Donkey Kong. Despite lacking the mainstream awareness of everybody's 872nd favorite cartoon, though, Donkey Kong managed to be such a big hit that Nintendo would finally be able to lock that Pop IP down, which resulted in the world getting a Popeye Game & Watch within a few months, a pretty decent arcade game the very next year, followed by a Donkey Kong Jr. math clone where Popeye teaches English to native Japanese speakers that, for whatever reason, never got an international release. Your move, Sega. Show us once and for all that you do what Nintendo don't. Hurry! Eventually, Nintendo would let the Popeye IP run out, most likely due to the fact that they want to own their games forever and ever till the end of time. I mean, if you had an IP that became more popular than Mickey Mouse, would you really want to keep paying royalties for an IP of a cartoon where the same goddamn thing happens in every episode? Well, eventually other developers would try their hands at a Popeye game, almost always on Nintendo consoles, oddly enough, with one exception on the Game Gear, but much like the cartoon, nobody ever really gave a monkey's nutsack about any of them. That is until now, however, almost 2 decades later, if you round it up. And also assuming there weren't any Popeye games that I may have missed with a quick Google search, and then one more after I wrote this line. Like, I know that all signs point to this being bad, but should we really judge this game based off of a few screenshots before giving it an honest attempt ourselves? I mean, sure, the developers are charging $10 for a friggin' calculator app, and they got South Park characters on their website, despite the fact that they only had that IP for one obscure gambling game like 20 years ago, but I mean, this is the first Popeye game in 3 dimensions after all, so maybe the folks over at Sabec have been working on this non-stop for the past 15 years to make sure they got it just right, much like how Retro Studios took their time in bringing the Metroid franchise into 3D. Even if it sucks, it can't be any worse than that time that Popeye murdered a guy in cold blood, could it? Well, right off the bat, you know it's not a very good sign when they don't even bother making music for the main menu. I mean, to be fair, the picture's kinda nice, I guess, but Christ almighty, they could've just used some royalty-free song, and I'd never even bothered to look it up to make fun of them for it. Wait a minute, why are there high scores in this game? Judging by all these numbers being so definitive, I'd wager that the game isn't even using the internet to get scores outside of my particular save file, but then again, I don't think there's very many people out there willing to play this game of their own free will, so either way, it's a pretty bad look. And I know this might seem like a nitpick, but why the frig's there a volume option in the settings? Like, it makes sense when other games give you volume options for specific sounds like effects, music, and voiceovers and all that, but you don't need to lump it all together. I've got a remote, you butt wagons. And I know I should just play the game before looking at the controls, but I couldn't help but notice that the only 2 things you can do besides move are punch and eat spinach, and for a 3D Popeye game, I'm a little bit bearish over the fact that there isn't a jump button here. And anyway, enough procrastinating though, let's give this game an honest fair shake, as soon as it loads. Why is the load time so long for a game that's only 800 megabytes? This is taking so long, I could probably pay my child support before the game starts up. I didn't say it would. Eventually the game starts up, and Olive Oil's already throwing shit at you from high above, and the goal is to collect it all to advance to the next stage, and I've gotta say, the music's already pretty friggin' annoying. While you're out cleaning that wench's mess up, though, the series bully Brutus follows you around to torment you in the exact same way Mr. X would in the Resident Evil 2 remake.
Jesus Christ!
Unlike Nemesis in the Resident Evil 3 remake, Brutus is pretty easy to outrun since you're an ass hair faster than he is, but after the first level, the game throws more enemies your way, like the one vulture in history who's not a scavenger. They may all be slow, but you're pretty much boinked if you get trapped into a corner. Thankfully though, if you get a hold of some of Popeye's patented spinach, it's gotta be laced with some banned substances, you'll be able to whoop their Rudy Poo candy asses no problem. As hilarious as it may be to see Popeye knocking enemies into the sky, though, it only takes like 20 seconds for them to come waltzing back into the stage, and whatever they do, you're forced to sit through the animation every time. Like, since it's really not that hard to avoid most enemies to begin with, it's almost not worth it to bother with the spinach in the first place. Like, if you see it, you might as well go ahead and grab it, but there's really never any point in looking for it, given how short all the stages are. And to make matters worse, there's only 3 in the entire friggin' game. Wouldn't really mind this if it meant that the game would just end sooner, but after the third level, the stages just keep looping over and over again, with the only real difference being there's extra enemies to deal with and even more of Olive Oil's trash to pick up than before. Like, sometimes she throws hearts down at you, but other times she throws letters at you that are supposed to be a part of a sentence, and the finished messages are usually pretty friggin' dumb. Like, thank God I managed to avoid Bluto's onslaught to get Olive Oil's dire message. It says, I love you? I mean, she's still stuck 200 feet in the air with Bluto wandering around, but I guess I win? Thank God I didn't miss a single letter, or I'd have never been able to figure that message out. I swear, Popeye do even worse on Wheel of Fortune than Randy Marsh did, and even then, it still wouldn't be the most controversial thing he's ever done. As if the game wasn't boring enough as it is, you gotta listen to the exact same brain-dead song looping over and over again, and it's even worse than Ghostbusters on the NES, because at least that had a smooth loop, whereas this one just kind of stops mid-note and starts over from the beginning. Wait, what the hell just happened? I went to the home menu to take notes because I always like to avoid artificially inflating my playtime through pausing as often as possible, and as soon as I came back, Popeye's ass was just flying into the sky. And then as soon as I got done writing that down, the exact same thing happened to me again, despite there not being any enemies in sight. Wait, what is this? Game over?
Oh, that's it. I've had enough of this. I can't be wasting any more time here. I gotta pick my kids up from t-ball practice at 7. Not that they'll ever be as good as me, of course. Oh, wait a minute. It's already 10:30. Well, I guess if I already missed the appointment, then there's no sense in going now, so I might as well give Popeye another whirl. Checking if software can be played? Oh yeah, because I'm just dying to play Popeye.
So, yeah, after giving the game another whirl in the hopes for some kind of an ending to give me closure, the stages just kept looping over and over again until I eventually lost my will to keep going and died. Suppose it's possible I might have gotten an ending if I kept going, but I gotta be honest, I can only repeat these levels over and over again so many times before I'm just over it, you know? I mean, much like episodes of the show, if you've seen one stage and you've seen them all, apparently the whole point of this game was just to get your best high score, which made sense with the first Popeye game given that it was a friggin' arcade in the early 80s, but was this really friggin' necessary for a collectathon that came out in late 2021? The developers of this game getting hold of the Popeye IP is a lot like a dog chasing a truck and actually catching it. Why you'd want the Popeye IP for a video game in the first place, I have no idea, because I mean, do kids really even give a shit about Popeye anymore? Nobody even cared about Popeye when I was a kid, so who on earth is this game for now? You'd think that if an obscure developer got a hold of an IP that's only slightly less popular than they are, then they'd at least have some kind of a very specific idea for game mechanics and fit Popeye like a glove or something. But nope, it's just a complete mess, with zero fun, 800 megabytes, 3 levels, and load times that are longer than your ass. Thankfully I got this on sale, but even so, I still feel like I was ripped off with a game that gives me what I can only describe as Superman 64 vibes.
And as if it wasn't bad enough to make one of the worst games on the Nintendo Switch and PS5, the developers actually threatened legal action against the YouTuber John Riggs just for telling people not to buy it. So if anybody from Sabec's watching this, then I dare you to try to sue me, because I'll tell you right now, I'm not going to be as nice about it as John Riggs was. I mean, I am the guy who went toe-to-toe with Atlus and won, after all. I mean, I don't know that they knew we were fighting, but I still got my download code for Persona Q nonetheless. So if it's a crime to tell the world that Popeye on the Nintendo Switch and PS5 is one of the worst games in this generation, then go ahead and send the cavalry, because I've got a lawyer that works on contingency, no money down.
Riggs. Yep. I just thought of my wish.
Sue me, dickhead.